Hey, I am so glad you joined us this week. This is going to be a fun one, a great topic that you're going to want to hear about. We have two special guests. One, little Winston, who joined us, our little new puppy who likes to be in my lap 24/7. So you will see him all the time. But that's not the real one. The real one is Dr. Christy Montes, dear friend of mine, but also mother of four, homeschooled 99% of the time, and a naturopathic doctor. Christy, I am so glad you're here.
So good to be here.
So, Christy, let's talk about food, all things food. So many parents want to know about how food impacts the brain, how food impacts learning, how food impacts just their children emotionally. So, I thought it'd be great to have you on and let's just talk about what is the deal with food? Does it impact our kids?
Yes, it does. So, there's so many studies that are coming out now, just with the ways that food impacts our health. And it is becoming much more, I don't know, I guess mainstream, where they're talking more about the chemicals and they're talking more about the things that are going into food and how unprocessed foods, because they're unprocessed, are going to give the body more fuel. And that's the key to feeding yourself, is you want to give your body the most amount of fuel that you can, that's going to give the body the most amount of micronutrients that it can gain. Because a lot of the foods today are so processed that they really don't have any nutritive value in it. When you're eating foods that are not nutritionally sound, a lot of times what happens is it makes the body deficient in different areas, and deficiencies always affect the body because we're designed to run on fuel sources and the nutrients that are inside of it. So, you always want to make sure you're fueling the body with good fuel.
Yeah, that makes so
So,
much sense. Well, how do you do that with young kids and not be the freak in the group? Like, I
right.
remember when my kids were little, I totally went 100% organic, no sugar. I made all their little weird snacks for birthday parties, and they were the kid over there looking like they were, abused because they didn't have the snack that everyone else had. How do you do it without
Right.
being the freak?
So I would say balance is the key. And I was the same way you were. I kind of did the same thing. For my third one, she's celiac. So I had to do more restrictive things for her because it would make her very sick if she didn't
Right.
have it. And, I had friends that their kids were so affected. Some of our kids that were on the spectrum, they were so affected by, the additives. And so for them, just to make their life doable, they would have to do things like that. But I think for the average kid, it is okay to, kind of have the balance in it. As long as that's not the majority of your diet. And of course, how often do you really go to birthday parties? I mean, you're not going to a birthday party, 6 days a week. It's usually maybe once or twice a month you're going to a birthday party. And unless it's super detrimental to their health, you just go ahead and let them have it so that they don't feel like they're so excluded. But when you can provide alternatives, I would say do that, not for parties and things like that, but say that they are, like if you're packing their lunch or whatever, there's always fun things you can put in there, but provide stuff that's going to feed them so that over the course of the day, their brain is going to be fueled with the things that it needs to do the best they can and feel optimal about themselves, because they don't feel good when they, can't control their behavior, or they're tired, or they're hangry, or, they don't feel good about themselves because they know what they want, how they want to behave. And so you don't want to create a problem for them in that, they are not being fed the nutrients that fuel their system for the rest of the day.
Yeah, there's so much talk about that, right? Over the years, we've heard, sugar makes a kid hyperactive. And what about dyes? All that. Let's talk about that. Does sugar make a kid hyperactive?
So I think it depends on what kind of sugar you're using. And it also depends on the kid. And I think too, it also depends on what are the other foods you're eating. So for example, say that you were doing a lunch and you put in there, graham crackers and I don't know, little, Sour Patch Kids. And I mean, I'm just trying to think of, and maybe like a yogurt that was heavily sugared, and then there wasn't a good protein source, or there wasn't a good fat source. what that's gonna do to the body if it's all sugary foods is their sugar's gonna elevate very quickly, and it'll give them like a boost for a minute. And then what's going to happen is the blood sugar will drop. And when the blood sugar drops, there's all kinds of things that can happen to kids. It can make them grouchy. It can make them fatigued. It can make their
Yeah.
brain foggy. It just depends on your kid, how your kid's going to respond. And I'm not saying don't put anything fun in their lunch, but let's don't make that be the majority of what you're eating. So
Right.
say they're
Right.
going to have a graham cracker. Well, then give them some, meat if they like meat and cheese, or they like sandwiches. Then I would say make them a sandwich with some good bread that's going to be a little, not like Wonder Bread because that's very fast burning, but do a little bit more whole grain source and do, meat. And I mean, I don't know if your kids like mayonnaise or whatever. The good thing about mayonnaise is if you get a good kind of mayonnaise, you're going to be putting some good fats into the brain also. So good fats, good protein sources, nutritional things like good fruits. And if they like carrot sticks or celery sticks or something like that, those are going to be slower burning. And they're also
Okay.
going to give the body nutrition. They're going to give the brain nutrition. It's going to fuel the brain and the body to be functioning at its optimal way.
I remember hearing on another podcast, they had a nutritionist talking, and she was talking about the way that we present it to kids and how powerful that is and the way that they see food. And I know I was guilty of referring to food as good and bad, like this isn't good for you. And I think that contributed somewhat to some of my kids having some disordered eating. One really battled it, and she talked about how extreme I was, and that contributed in the way that we labeled food in our home. And meanwhile, I'm over here thinking I'm teaching the right thing. Most of us do, right?
Right.
We think we're doing the right thing. What do you think is the best way to label food as we teach our young kids about it?
So I think, and I did the same thing with my older ones. I think what I've seen in my practice is when we try and put the positive spin on it rather than the negative spin on the foods that we wouldn't necessarily want them to eat,
Yeah.
let's focus on the benefits of what the good food does. So, wow, this has so much good vitamin A and vitamin C in it. This is really going to fuel your cells, or things like this. I'm so glad that you're trying new foods that really just give your brain some power. And then the foods that we don't necessarily, like, or we don't want them to have as much of, I think rather than saying, well, that's bad, and making it kind of a moral thing, let's just make it be, hey, you know what? Let's choose something to go along with that that's going to fuel your body, so
Okay.
that we're camping on the positive and not focusing on the negative. I just think
Yeah, that's
for my
great.
kids, that would have been more beneficial, just because and don't we all run better when we're talking more positively than negatively? And
Yes.
like now they're
Yes.
studying so much on neural pathways and how the neural pathways in the brain, when we are, in the present and focusing on the positive, what that's doing for the brain, it's creating new dendrites in the brain that create new neural pathways that are making the brain healthier. So let's focus on the positive end of things rather than camping on the negative. So that when they're labeled with a choice, then rather than thinking, oh, well, this is bad food, when they see a choice between a good food, they're like, oh, well, this food is going to fuel my body. This is going to give me some, vitamin A, or this is going to give me some vitamin C. So I want to put that in my body because that's going to give me fuel like Superman.
I love that. Yeah, and I
Um,
think just educating them and helping them be invested in it, and maybe even learning, like you said specifically, what vitamin do you get from this? What nutrient do you get from this? And when they look at whatever, the cookie, the donut, whatever, just show that, oh my gosh, there's not a lot of nutritional value in this. I mean, you can have it,
right.
but just know it's not going to fuel your body. So yes, what else can we have that's going to give us that fuel? I think that's such a great, and it takes the emotion out of it. I think that's the
Yeah,
thing, that we make it.
I think so
I
too.
have made it so emotional, and I think that takes the emotion out of it for kids, and we really are setting them up for success more. What about dyes? I know that one of my son, boy, wee, when he would get some dye in his body, I mean, I used to giggle and kind of cringe and go, I'm pretty sure he gets demon possessed. I mean, it was mind blowing what a different child that dye turned him into. And I didn't know anything about dyes as a young mom. And once I removed that from his diet, he really did change drastically. What are your thoughts about dyes?
So I think that yes, they do cause that. Neuroscience is studying a lot of that now too, that it does create like a cranial inflammation. The artificial flavors,
Okay.
artificial colors, that kind of stuff, they're kind of like little vandals that go in and open doors in the brain that opens their brain up to, have like neurotransmitter alterations.
Wow.
So it is like MSG does that too. They're like little vandals that just go in there and kind of wreak havoc on the neurotransmitters of the brain. So it really is, they've proven that that does do that. I don't know how that they can kind of allow that to still go on when there are so many options that they don't have to put that in there. Some of
Right.
the food industry, some of the chemicals that they're putting into foods, they are also, they do it strategically because it does create a chemical reaction in the brain that does make the brain addictive to
Mm,
that artificial flavor and color. So then they want more of it because their
interesting.
brains become addicted to it. So
It's a
then they're
marketing tool.
hooking, it is. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. So
Wow.
in a lot of places in other foreign countries, they don't allow that stuff at all.
No, when we visit Jeff's, home country of New Zealand, not there. It's amazing. I gather all the candy to bring back for the grandkids and keep here
Yes.
because it is all dye free. And and it's not double the price. I think that's the other thing.
No.
Parents are like, here we are. We have to pay double the price to give our kids dye free, additive
Right.
free, food. And food is so expensive, you have to give and take. So if you could only afford to do a few
Right.
things, it's like, which one do you do? And so it sounds like cut the dyes out as much as you can, put
Yes.
protein
Yeah, I
in as
would.
much as
Yep.
you can, and cut out the sugar, the refined
Yeah.
sugar, and
Right.
go
The
to more
refined
natural
sugar.
sugars like maple syrup and honey. I know you love honey. What's the benefits of doing
Yes,
raw honey?
yes. So honey is it depends on if you can get local honey. If you're using local honey, they've proven that it gives you little micro doses of the pollens and the allergens of the
Okay.
area that you live in, and it will almost be almost like an anti-allergy for some people. It will help them to kind of be less allergic to their surrounding area. It's almost like little micro doses of the allergens in your area gives the body strength to kind of say, okay, you know what, this is an allergen that has bothered me in the past, but because I've had little bits of it, now I'm not so sensitive to it.
Oh, that's
Um,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah. So, and food sensitivities are another thing to consider too. Even in healthy food, it's one of those things where, just kind of be aware of your kids and how it changes their mentality and their behavior and those kind of things. Because, sometimes even healthy foods can bother kids if they're sensitive to it. And so that's kind of important to look at too. I find even some of the kids in my practice that are eating, the foods that are fueling their body better, they're bothersome to them because they are sensitive. So when you're sensitive to a food, it elevates what's called the IgG in the blood. It creates an immune response. And sometimes immune responses can manifest themselves as behavior issues. So that's important too, to kind of to watch, because once again, anytime you're doing something that's not natural to the body or creates a reaction in the body, you're going to have some type of response. And when that IgG is elevated, you can have inflammation. And when you have inflammation in the gut, you have inflammation in the brain. So those are things to be aware of as well.
So what
So
do you
that's
do
what I
if you're a
found.
parent and you're suspecting that your child has a sensitivity? Like, should they document what their child is eating? Should they what can they do to gather information before they go see someone like yourself? In the meantime, where do they start, I guess?
So I would just start keeping track. If you're kind of noticing a pattern happening, you're noticing a pattern of, gosh, they really are fatigued after they eat this. They just want to go take a nap. And they really had some foods that would really give them some good nutrition. They're tired. So, a lot of people think that allergies manifest as always stuffy nose or cough or
Mhm.
wheezing, things like that. That's not always the case. What I tell people in my practice a lot of times is, their energy level after they eat is a good indicator a lot of times as to how their body's responding to a food. So say if they eat, a block of cheese, and after they eat a block of cheese, they're noticing every time they do that, they want to go take a nap. That's something to look into, because
Okay.
fatigue is a good sign. Or for kids, a lot of times they're whiny, because they feel more tired. So they become
Right.
whiny, or they just don't act like themselves. So that's a good indicator. it
I
can be
know, like
skin
rash,
issues.
like I was gonna say, I
Yeah.
remember Henry used to get this rash on his face
Yeah.
when he would have tomatoes or
Right.
nightshades, and we
Right.
noticed that. And, some did get a stuffy nose, some got our belly ache. I mean, different,
Right.
it has been different with
Yes.
every one of my kids, how they react to foods that they're sensitive to. As they got older, I would see acne. I remember one dairy
Right.
acne on their back.
Right.
It's amazing how the body tells on itself, right? So I think you're
It
right. If you
does.
just start,
Yep.
we always talk about just being curious as a parent instead of like running and
Right.
getting allergy tests poked everywhere. Just start by being curious. If it's nothing where breathing is an issue, just start taking notes for a few days, for a week or two before making a phone call. And
Right.
if they wanted to call, like, where do they go? That's something you could do, right? They could contact you even.
They
Can't
can.
you?
Hmm.
Okay. So we'll put a
Yeah, they
link to
can.
all of the information. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, they can do that. And also looking for somebody, um, there is a difference between an allergy and a sensitivity. So,
Okay.
and what some people don't know is that sensitivities can create just as many issues for the body as an allergy. It's just that an allergy is going to manifest a much greater response. But over time, they both create issues with the body. So, an allergist is fine if you're seeing severe reactions. You, of course, don't want to leave anything with, anaphylaxis or anything like that. But when you go to the allergist, they're going to measure IgE, which is an immune response of the body. Someone that does sensitivities, it could be through a lot of different things. There are sensitivity tests now. One's called Cyrex Array. Some practitioners use that if they have on their website Cyrex, that's a food allergy test. So they'll do that and it's a blood draw and they'll check top allergens and things like that. I'm trying to think of the other one. There's a couple other places that will do that for you. There are companies that are just food sensitivity driven, and I can't think of
Okay.
what they are. If I think of it, I'll let you know and I'll do a link for it. But another thing you can do is it's called frequency medicine. And that's really what I do. I used to, be more into the blood draws and things like that, but blood draws are expensive. And a lot of times people can't afford it. So in my practice, I use what's called frequency medicine. And basically or nutrition response testing. We use the body to tell us how the neurological system is responding to a different food. And you can look up people that do, nutrition response testing or applied kinesiology. That's sometimes what they call it. Some people call it muscle testing, even though that's a misnomer. It's not really a muscle. It's working with the neurological system. But, they've run studies on, in fact, I have one that I put in my opening packet with people where it talks about they've measured the serum immune responses of people just by doing blood. And then they've done with the nutrition response testing or muscle testing, if you want to call it that, they've measured that. And, it was just a 19 to 20 difference. So it was 98%. And it's a
Well, I
lot
know for
cheaper to go
myself.
that way.
I'm sure you remember not long ago, I had some blood work done and I had seen you about the same time. And I remember I didn't tell you my blood work, but I saw you did the consult, you gave me my results, and then I handed you the blood work and it was, match. It was hilarious. I was like, I can't even believe that. It was that close. So yeah. And
Yeah, it
it is
really is. Yeah.
a lot more
Hmm.
affordable.
It is. And it's a way that you can kind of keep track of it. Because with food sensitivities, I will say in an age where our guts are being pretty messed up with different things like glyphosate, and glyphosate's what they spray on crops. They don't allow it in foreign countries, but they do in America. Even on organic grains at the tail end, they'll let them spray it. And it is like it opens a drawbridge in the gut. And so the gut becomes more permeable. And so what happens sometimes is the food sensitivities do change because as the gut, when you're having it over and over and over and over again, the same foods, and you have those drawbridges that are open, that same food keeps going into the bloodstream. It creates more sensitivities for people. So that can always also change. So if you notice changes
Yeah.
in your kids with different foods, like say they were okay for a season, eating cheese, and then you start noticing some issues, well, then be aware that they can change. They probably just had too much of that and you need to take a little bit of a break
Right.
so
That's
that their
definitely what I
bodies
found with
can
my kids.
get better. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
the other
So,
thing that's so helpful is that we know this now. I think for most of us, we didn't even know about sensitivities until in our 30s, right? And because all the
Right.
stuff that we had eaten as a child was building up and building up and building up. And finally, somebody's like, whoa, you should probably stop eating that. But now we know it. So we can help our young kids from the get go. We can really hone
Right.
in and really see what is nutritionally beneficial for them and take a break from what is not. I think we're going to help them so much in the long run by starting earlier. So is there a way a parent could go on the offensive? Maybe they don't see that their child's sensitive to anything, but they're just curious as to what's best for them. Should they get tested, or do you only pursue testing when you see a problem?
You know what? I think it's always good to kind of know what foods are the best for you and what, that's just my personal opinion. It's a business
Yeah,
that I'm in. So by virtue of that, I like to kind of know what is beneficial to me and what isn't. There is also another, thing that you can do. You can look up NAET practitioners. It's NAET. I'm a NAET practitioner, and it's a way that you can desensitize your body to different foods. And what's interesting is sometimes we're even sensitive to, and I know you've desensitized, Kathy, and I have too, to even nutrition. Sometimes our bodies aren't using the nutrition that
right.
we're taking in, like magnesium or vitamin B or vitamin C. So they can actually be desensitized from those nutrients because their body's developed a sensitivity to that. But you definitely need B vitamins and all those things. So that's another thing you can look at. But yeah, if you don't know where to start with that and you just have a suspicion, I would say go to somebody that is a practitioner that isn't super expensive, that will give you, I mean, if you want to go the blood route, you can, but I will tell you that the blood route for me was not beneficial. 28 years ago when my daughter, this is why I got into this years ago, because my daughter had psoriasis from her heels to her bottom. She had it on her eyes, on her hands. She was running 106 fevers. She was sick constantly. She was on antibiotics all the time. And I took her to the allergist and he ran a full panel of testing. And we spent so much money that we didn't have back then. And at the end of it, he looked at me and said, well, she doesn't show up that she has allergies, but she has them. I mean, look at her. That's what he said. And I said, well, what do I do about it? And he said,
Yeah.
give her half a teaspoon of Zyrtec 2 times a day for the rest of her life. And she was not even 2 yet. And
Wow.
so I thought, gosh, I don't feel good about doing that. I will if we have to, but I would rather find out what's causing the problem than just medicate the symptom.
Right.
So
Boy, well,
that's,
hold on.
yeah,
I think that's kind of the key right there, right?
yep, yep,
That wraps up this whole food and get to the root of it, right? No,
hmm
just, I think so much we mask. I think that with behavior too, right? I think we
yes,
often just let me stop this behavior. It's uncomfortable, instead of let me
right,
get to the root of what my child is really trying to communicate. And I think food is the same way. If we could get to the root of what's happening, then we could
right,
really solve a lot of problems for our child and for our family if we could just take the time. But often that takes time and a little more effort, and it's a process. It's not always instant. And I know I'm
right,
guilty of wanting an instant answer. So
yes,
sometimes
yes.
it's not that fast, is it?
No, it's not. And the thing is too, is when you're drowning in the toddler years, like I remember the way it was for us when we were drowning in the toddler years, it is hard. I mean, that's a
It's
hard time of
hard.
life.
It
And you
is.
want to do the best you can for your kids and you want to give them, the best they can. And, I mean, I think if I could say one thing, even though I am into nutrition and giving kids good stuff, really just cultivate relationship with your kids and work to do that because you know your kid better than anybody if you take the time to do that. And even though
Yes.
it's good to kind of find a quick fix, you will benefit so much more if you're really getting, and I know that Kathy, because I've watched you parent your kids, you're so good at that because you just get right to the heart of what's going on with the kids. And I think that that's, an important thing to do. Look at their heart and look at where they're at. And is this a situation where it's foods that are bothering them? Or is it a situation of, we're going through a lot of stress at home? Because emotion is huge in what we're doing. And one thing I would say, one of the biggest things that I see in my practice is even with food and nutrition and all those things, if you as a mom are not doing self-care, and I know that I did not do that well,
You
because if your nervous system is regulated, and you are working, and there's so many things you can find now, sources that talk about, the vagus nerve and how to regulate the nervous system and different things like that. And what are some good things for self-care and things like that. As a mom, if you can kind of regulate your own nervous system and you can kind of manage your own stuff, you're going to be able to notice in your kids what the issues are. You'll be able to pinpoint, okay, I think this food is bothering them. Or I think this situation is not a healthy environment for them. It sets them off. But if you're in fight or flight all the time as a mom and you haven't practiced self-care and you have not taken care of your nervous system, the kid's nervous system is not going to be regulated either.
Whew. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's heavy, and that's so good. It's so good because I think it's like, you're right. Here we are talking about food and nutrition and all the things, but emotionally, you might just not have the bandwidth to even think about this right now if you are
right.
not taking those moments for yourself and making sure that you are, and it goes to your food too. I mean, I know for
Exactly.
myself, when I am
Yep.
feeding myself, I think I came in feeling guilty to my session a couple weeks ago or last week, because I had a June full of sugar with all the company here. And boy, my body tells on itself. I'm more tired. I'm more irritable. Just
Right.
having extra drinks with the friends and the company, I forget just how much, because that's not been my norm for a while. And I forget just how much it truly does impact me and
Right.
the way that I parent, because I'm
Right.
impatient when I've had a lot of
Yes.
sugar. I'm
Yes.
impatient when I didn't get good sleep because I had maybe an extra drink. It all matters, doesn't it? I mean, again, not trying to be
It does.
extreme, not trying to
No,
be, there is a balance. I mean, there is a balance, but recognizing, all right, girlfriend, you got to take care of yourself so that you have what it takes to take care of these kids.
that's right. And there's no, my 26-year-old texted me not long ago and she said, Mama, there's no mistakes, just the journey. And that was such a good reminder because there really are no mistakes. And I think if we can get to the point where it's not good or bad,
Yeah.
if we can get to the point where it's like, okay, I didn't do that well. And it is okay to say to your kids, man, I screwed that up. I'm having to do that with my adult kids.
Not
Like,
only is it
so
okay,
sorry.
it's good to say
It
that.
is. It
It's
is.
good to say, hey, I screwed that up. No matter if your child is
Right.
2 or 22. It's good to
Right.
say, we're just humans too. I think I've said this before, but Sarah's so cute. She's like, Mom, I have to tell my college friends all the time, hey, be nice to your parents. They're just people too. And
Right.
I think
That's
that's
right.
right. We're just people too. And
That's
we've got
right.
to be willing to own that we don't have it figured out. We're doing this for the first time. I mean, I've never
Right.
parented
That's right.
kids this age. I
Nope.
mean, the older ones
Nope.
anyway, right? The younger ones, but
Right.
we're still learning. We're still learning.
Right.
And I know you and I both, we need to do a podcast on our journey because we have been like, woo,
Yeah.
it has been such a journey for us personally to get to this point.
Right.
I mean,
Oh,
right? But that journey matters. I think that journey impacts our parenting, and that journey impacts our decisions, and that journey impacts our role modeling to our kids and how we
right.
role
I
model
think so.
the way we
And I
care
think
for
that it's,
ourselves.
yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that your kids in general will much more than we give them credit for emotionally. It's kind of like animals. When the animals are in the home and it's stressful, they're trying to figure out what's going on because they feel that,
Yes. Yes.
and sense what's going on in you. And I think your kids do as well. And I think that, if you can let yourself off the hook, and what I tell my grown kids now, because I've got 3 that are grown and 1 left that's almost grown. She's 18. She's going to be entering her senior year of high school this year. But, I just tell them all the time, you do what you know at the time. And as you know more, you do better. You do more. And you change what you're doing. And you just, you do what you can at the time. And so look at yourself that way. Give yourself grace and
Yes.
and do what you can. I will say there's this cool thing that yours and my hairdresser actually, Kathy showed me. It's an app and it's called Yuka, and it's Yuka.
I'm writing
And
this down.
yeah,
Yucca.
it's
Never
really
heard of
cool.
it.
So
Okay,
it's a
what is it?
great place to start if you don't know anything, about processed foods, unprocessed foods,
Okay.
anything like that. Basically, you click on the barcode and it'll tell you, it'll give you the color, like a red, an orange, or a green. And if it's green, it's got less additives than the red or the orange. So they even
Okay.
have it in cosmetics and soaps and things like that, because
Oh,
they're even
fabulous.
showing that that is an issue too. That can create an allergen as well, because the skin is the biggest organ. So that was a helpful app. She showed it to me, just the other day, and I thought this is a great app for if you're just beginning, because if you don't know anything about where to start, at least it'll give you some framework. For example, and I just had this in my mind because she had just been to the store and brought it with her. But different creamers. She was trying to find a creamer that had less additives in it, that was green. She wanted to find a green
A
creamer.
green one.
So
Yeah.
she went through all the different barcodes and found the one creamer that was green, that still tasted good, so there's all these choices, and just, start off by just making the healthier choice,
Yeah.
the
And
one
that's
that's
so
going to fuel the
hard.
body. Yeah,
Because if you look at the store and you think, oh my gosh, it is so
it
overwhelming. I
is.
mean, even like for me, moving here, we're trying to get back to making sure our laundry soap, I mean, because you gave me your laundry soap person, and all these things, trying to go back because I'd kind of gotten away from it, because it is hard to keep up and keep up
Right,
and keep up. So I'm trying to go back and make sure I'm cleaning up everything in our environmental stuff and our food, and it gets overwhelming. They're just like, forget it. It's just too much. It's just like,
right.
how do you do it all? So what do we say to that mom who's listening to this going, y'all are crazy. I'm just trying to keep my head above water because I got like a kid pooping on the floor and another kid fighting and one biting, and you're telling me I gotta like make sure my environment's clean. The food. How do they start? Is it with this Yuka app? Is that the thing, or where
You
would
know
you tell
what?
them to
I
start?
think that you could do that. I think, there really is a lot of information now. I think because people are starting to realize, like, I just read a study from the Journal of Neurology yesterday, and it was about kids that are on the spectrum. They have found in their urine an overabundance of glyphosate, which is, the Roundup that they're spraying on, and their bodies are so sensitive to it. So when they tested their urine, it was just exorbitant how much in it. So what I would
Wow.
say is just do a little bit of a little bit of research. It's, I know that there's lots of stuff that's censored and different things like that, but it is out there.
Okay.
I think there's a website called EWG that
Okay.
tells you some different things. And just kind of going for the more naturally sourced stuff. So for example, if you're using a soap, and these are not much more expensive, you can do like a Castile soap, because that's a more natural form of soap.
Okay.
The more natural laundry detergent, sometimes the ones that are advertised as environmentally safe are not necessarily the best, but they're going to be at least a little bit better without so much artificial dyes and fragrances and different things like that. So what I would say is just start with what you can do at the time. Think about, like, okay, I'm on their laundry aisle and I'm seeing all these laundry detergents. What can I get? Well, try and get the one that's a little bit more environmentally friendly if you have no other choices, just because that's going to at least be a little bit better, because if it's not as bad for the environment, it's probably not as bad for the human either.
Right.
So,
Right.
that's kind of where I would start. And then, lots of, if you can find um, naturally sourced soaps, because your skin is your biggest organ, and a lot of those soaps, like those ones, like the bath gels that are super smelly and all those things, a lot of times they are low molecular weight and they go into the body. So you can get good smelling soaps, but just get the more naturally sourced, like the Castile soaps with the essential oils, that kind of stuff. I will tell you, I use two different for cleaning supplies, and this is cheap and I use it a lot. I get, just at the grocery store, 98-cent peroxide, a
Okay.
bottle of peroxide, and I put it in a spray bottle. Like, I buy a naturally sourced, just because you want a solid bottle so it keeps the hydrogen and the oxygen in the H2O2. So I
Right.
buy like a good spray bottle, not just like a plant sprayer that you can see through it. And I put the peroxide in there, and I put essential oils. I buy one from a company called Hopewell Essential Oils. It's called Germ Buster, and it's not expensive at all. They're a family
Yeah.
run business. I put it in there and I put it in my spray bottle, and we have tested on a petri dish the differences in bacteria with bleach and that has way less. And it's
Wow.
cheap, and your kids can use it because it's not going to hurt them. So if you want
Right.
them to help you clean the toilets or whatever, it's non-toxic. They can use it. It's cheap. It's economical. It's going to kill the germs. It's going to get rid of a bunch of junk. So that's kind of an easy way
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
source a
just
cleaning
even changing
supply.
that. And then I think with our food, just replacing, you know, processed snacks with fruits and veggies and hummus or
Yes,
pesto that's homemade or anything that we can feed them from home versus, you know, or that
right.
was grown as close to its form from being grown, I'm guessing is what you would say as well, with lots
That's
of fruit.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Lots of protein. It's so critical for growing bodies. Protein is so critical because it's got amino acids. It's got tryptophan, which tryptophan kind of is that's what's in turkey that kind of makes
That's all
you
I hear about
mellow
tryptophan is
out.
turkey.
Yes,
But I think
yes.
that's
So it
yeah,
gives you lots of good, and then the micronutrients, because we just have to remember that not only does sugar, create allergies in the body and make the immune system weaker, it also draws all the B vitamins, and B vitamins are the vitamins that feed the neurological system. So when you're
okay.
doing a lot of sugar and it keeps drawing those B vitamins away, you're not going to have the stuff that feeds the neurological system. And your neurological system is what kind of calms the brain, does all those things. So,
Right.
as you said, the most like be a label reader, not obsessively, but just kind of look. And if there's, if white refined sugar is the first ingredient, try not to buy that one. Find one that
Yeah.
has it way down lower, because remember, and not everybody knows this, but when you look at a label, what's the first thing in the label is what's the most abundant thing.
Right.
So as it goes to least abundant, so try not to choose something that has the additives as the primary ingredients. If you
Great.
don't recognize what's in it, then it's probably not food,
Yeah. Scary, but
you
true.
know?
Hey, I
Yeah.
think this has been so helpful because I know it's the time of year everybody's planning. They're planning their menus, they're planning back to school, and maybe just to help them think, okay, what can we do just to bring it a little more balanced? And again, I think we both would say balance is the key with this, but
Yes.
being aware
Yes.
and helping our kids recognize the nutritional value in something and how it fuels their body. I think that really is a gift we can give them from the get-go. Anything
I
else,
think so
Christy?
too. You know what? I think that if you have the mindset of we're teaching our kids to make wise choices, in everything, right?
Sure, sure.
How to treat each other, how to do food, how to, navigate what they want to do. I think it's not about good or bad or shame and guilt. It's all about, let's practice making great choices,
Yeah.
for what is gonna make us be our best selves,
Yeah.
because
I love that.
we're always growing towards being our best selves. And hey, you know what? When you're not your best self, start over. Who cares?
That's
Right?
right. Always tomorrow. Tomorrow is new with no mistakes. Anne of Green
That's
Gables.
right.
Okay, where can they find you, Christy? If they want to follow you, if they want to make an appointment with you, if they just want to like hear how much you know, which is an insane amount, where can they
Well,
find
I
you?
don't know about that, but our website is drbobmontes.com, and it's
Well, you are
drbobmontes.com.
not Dr. Bob Montez.
I know, but that's my husband. And
Oh,
to be
okay.
honest, I have never advertised, or I have a full practice just by word of mouth. So I put myself on the website as a courtesy to my husband this year.
Very good. All right, Dr. Bob
So,
Montez. They can find you there. That's awesome. And on social media, are you on social media at all for your business?
well, you can be thinking about me because that is my next project. I have
Very
hesitated to
good.
do that. So yes, I am going to do that. My
Hmm.
oldest daughter is here for a little bit, and that's kind of one of our goals this year, is to get working on that, because I do feel like I repeat the same thing over and over again. And I love to
Yes.
teach people, and that is my love and my vision. And my vision is for young moms just like you. And because I wish someone would have helped me be a
Yeah.
little bit more balanced. And so, yes, so I am going to do that. Not
Well,
yet, but it's in the workings.
one of my
So,
goals is to have you on regularly so that we can talk because you and I have said before there's so many subjects. It was funny as we're planning, there's like, okay, what do we want to talk about today? Because really we have lived so
right.
much life together and
We have.
we have made some mistakes. We have learned from those mistakes. And I think that's helpful. I think, again, that's what we're here for. We are here to teach the
Right.
next group of mamas coming up, and anything we can do to help them make decisions that might benefit their family, then I know we both are eager to do that. So we will share your social
Yes.
media as soon as you get it up and running.
Okay.
I listened to a book. I'll close with this. I think I mentioned this, a tipping point I listened to, and it's all about mavens. And a maven is a person who is a teacher and a researcher. And it made me think of you. And I'm so grateful for the researcher that you are and the knowledge that you have and your willingness to share. Thanks so much for being here today, Christy. Love you.
Thank you. I love you too, girl. It's so good to
All right.
see you.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay.